By 1588, the Spanish Armada was without doubt the most feared naval fleet ever assembled, with a total of 8,000 sailors, 20,000 soldiers, all amassed on 28 purpose-built warships with 1,500 brass guns. The Armada was labelled the Invincible Armada by an understandably fearful English public. But why did this floating fortress fail to accomplish its goal of invading England and dethroning its Protestant Queen? Here we shall discover the main reasons as to why this attempt of annexation on religious grounds was not completed. The launch of the Spanish Armada was no act of spontaneity. Relations between England and Spain had been in decline for a number of years. Relationships between England and Spain started deteriorating from 1559 when Philip requested Elizabeth's hand in marriage. Prior to this proposal, Philip and Elizabeth were on favourable terms and were even considered friends. However, pleasantries between the two started depleting from here and accumulated in the chaos of the Armada. The reason behind Elizabeth's rejection of this proposal lay into the uncertainty that plagued the country during the time of Philip's marriage to Mary. Elizabeth and her subjects learnt from this and did not want a Catholic Spanish ruler in England. Both of these actions changed the dynamics between the two nations, but the final straw for Philip was the execution of Mary Queen of Scots on the 8th of February 1587. There are a few plots to try and have Elizabeth killed, but it is widely believed that Mary had been conspiring in them. The plot that sealed her fate, however, was the Babington plot, which was uncovered in 1587. As Philip was named as Mary's successor, his chances of being named king were weakened considerably. After this, conflict was inevitable, and on the 29th of July 1588, the Armada left from Lisbon with its captain, Alonso Perez de Guzman, the Duke of Medina Sidonia, leading the charge. The Armada cruised up the Portuguese coast with ambition and confidence. On the 19th of June, whilst gathering more supplies in a northern Spanish coastal town named Coruña, a storm scattered the fleet. Here, 3 of the Armada's galleys were destroyed, not entirely crippling the fleet, but weakening it nonetheless. From here on, no more bad luck occurred for the fleet, and by the 29th of July the Armada was beginning its approach into Cornwall. Crucially for the English, a ship had spotted the Armada on its approach and had alerted officials in Plymouth. On hearing this information, the Western Squadron made its way out of Plymouth Sound and into the English Channel.
The English leader of the Western Squadron, and the man leading the initial defence of England, was Francis Drake, a hero to the English and personal favourite of the Queen. To the Spanish, a pirate. His moment arrived the day after the Spanish were spotted, the 31st of July. On this day, the famous story of Drake finishing his game of bowls before winning the battle was born. Drake was said to have been arrogant, but in fact he knew that the tide of the River Tamar would prevent his fleet from leaving Devonport, therefore giving Drake the time to finish his game of bowls. From here onwards, the so-called Invincible Armada discovered its fleet to be quite the contrary. It stumbled and stuttered through the English Channel in a now vital effort to meet the Duke of Parma's forces at Dunkirk. En route, they suffered a minor defeat at the Isle of Wight before encountering the largest defeat of their campaign at Calais on the 7th of August. This battle also signifies a fantastic tactical news from Francis Drake, with the help from the Italian Federico Giambelli, an Italian engineer widely recognised as the inventor of the halberds. These were essentially old ships, loaded up with gunpowder and set on fire, then left to drift towards the Spanish. The Armada had lookouts for this possibility, but there wasn't much they could do to prevent the damage this would cause. The Spanish had to leave Calais immediately, and importantly for the English. This move broke the solid crescent formation that the Spanish had adopted up until this point, making them extremely vulnerable to attack. The Battle of Gravelines that followed led to further ships being sunk for the Spanish, with 3 being captured by the Dutch and another left stranded by Calais. The English had once again been the victors of the day, and the campaign was becoming disastrous for the Spanish. After this day, the chances of a successful Spanish invasion and the dethroning of the Queen looked almost impossible. The Spanish also made a number of vital misconceptions that further contributed to their downfall. Not minor assumptions, but huge parts of their campaign. For example, the plan was that the fleet that had left from Lisbon would meet up with the Duke of Parma's forces in Dunkirk. However, the misconception here was that Parma's fleet would simply sail to Dunkirk. The reality was that the Dutch had a numerous and active fleet, 40 ships all committed to obstructing Parma. Parma himself did not believe the enterprising of England would work. This, coupled with his dislike of the Duke of Medina Sidonia, led to his poor communications during the campaign, further reducing Philip's hope of conjoining the forces.
The second misconception very much relied on religion again, a common mistake of Philip during the campaign. The misconception being referred is that he believed that once the Spanish had landed on English soil, English Catholics would assist in the invasion of England. In fact, this was the opposite. The first contingent of troops to be mobilised in defence of England was led by a Catholic nobleman, Vincent Montague. Furthermore, the English were committed and prepared. The defending nation's forces stood at 200,000 strong, and even King James, son to an executed mother in the Mary Queen of Scots, supplied 16,000 men in defence of England. The fact that Catholic Irish had also attacked the Spanish when they landed south of Galway showed that the people of these nations' allegiances ran deeper than religion. Finally, for the Spanish, they had a fair share of bad luck as well. As previously mentioned, awful weather twice damaged and scattered the Spanish Armada, and they were still left with a devastatingly large fleet. Arguably, the worst stroke of luck for the Spanish lay in the death of the Marquis de Santa Cruz, the intended commander for the Armada. His death a number of months before meant that the Armada lost an experienced naval captain who could have changed the tide of war for them. Instead, the Duke of Medina Sidonia led the Armada as a man of very little experience, and came home a man of severely damaged reputation. The Spanish flags on this map each represent shipwrecks during their retreat. 30,000 Spanish men lost their lives in total.